Remember, God loves you and we love you, and Jesus is Lord.
everyone. I'm Gene Bailey. You're watching Flashpoint. Yes, snow has blanketed Texas. So much happening here. But tonight's program is very, very special. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Simone Gold. You may remember her from COVID. She was America's Frontline Doctors, and she established that. But she's going to tell you some great information in this interview I did with her about your health. All of this year, we're talking about, yes, make America healthy again, but we're going to help you, give you ways to do that. And some of that even includes the way you handle your own health insurance and the way you handle your doctors. So pay special attention. You might want to record this program, a lot of great information, or at least have your note and pen ready to take notes, because it's some good stuff. And then, of course, we've got a whole list of people today. Callie Means will follow up about their health, Monica Page, Michael Knowles, Brandon Tatum, and Mary Margaret Olahan. So much packed in today's show. You're going to really enjoy this. And I want to remind you, Flashpoint Next Level starts January 30th and 31st at Lord of Hosts Church. Now, this event is only on the evenings there in Omaha. Speakers include Pastor Hank Kuhneman, myself, Tony Suarez, Lance Wallnow, and Rick Green, and who knows who might else show up. So all you got to do is go to fpnextlevel.com and let us know you're coming. All right, let's get into the interview. Here is Dr. Simone Gold. You know, you've heard this name before. America's Frontline Doctor burst on the scene during COVID. Dr. Simone Gold, thank you for coming by. Thank you for all that you're doing. Let's get an update. It's been a year since I've talked to you. Talk about what's happening.
For sure. So America's Frontline Doctors, we're pretty busy. We just submitted an amicus brief in the USA versus Skermeti case, which is about the transgender mutilation of our children. That's a big deal.
Absolutely, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And we also just produced our a second movie, actually, called whatisadoctor.org. Really, what is a doctor? Is a doctor somebody who's truth teller, a healer, reality-based, or is a doctor somebody who lies to you and offers you negative things like Dr. Fauci did? So whatisadoctor.org, we explore the lines that doctors crossed during the COVID years, and then we progress to 2024 in the transgender ideology. Whatisadoctor.org, you'll love it.
Well, yeah, we should. We need to watch that. The whole thing is, we had some people on here earlier, like Chloe Cole, who came out and said she not only did she lose, friends, but the doctors themselves turned on her, who were supposed to be giving care, when she decided, this isn't what I want to do. She felt bullied into this whole thing, and
it's the medical industry it's shameful what has happened to doctors. My dad was a doctor. Being a doctor was honorable.
Right. It was.
Now many doctors are using their knowledge really against patients who have less knowledge. We won't tolerate that. So America's Frontline Doctors, we have a lot of freedom doctors, a lot of independent thinkers. We say no to the insurance, we say no to the medical industrial complex, and we bring people like you, people like your viewers, the truth. One of those truths is whatisadoctor.org.
Okay, so they can see, is that documentary? It's out now?
It's a documentary, it's out now, and we're actually streaming it for free because it's so important that you see this and you become empowered.
Okay,
and
awesome.
Chloe, I believe Chloe has seen it. It's an outstanding film.
All right, whatisadoctor.org. All right, so go watch that.
Yeah.
We'll watch it.
Yeah.
We'll watch it. All right, goldcare.com. Last time we talked, it was that you were really just kind of rolling that out.
Exactly.
Talk about that.
That is the most exciting thing to come from the COVID years. So we saw doctors not put patients' best interests first. We absolutely saw the break in the doctor-patient relationship. Before 2020, we thought maybe a doctor was some were better, some were worse, but we never thought that they didn't care about their patient. And we saw undeniably that doctors did not care about their patients. They let them take lethal treatments. They didn't give them early treatments. They told them to stay home until they were blue. Unacceptable. So we Freedom Doctors got together and we launched a business, goldcare.com. Goldcare.com is national telemedicine all over the nation. We have doctors in every state.
Wow.
And how we use it is you come and you join. You become a member. Very low price, Gene. It's $10 a month, $20 for a family. And then you get access to all the education. We have webinars. We have lectures by some amazing experts. We have classes, nutrition classes and spirituality classes. And then if you need to see a doctor, you then pay as you go. It's very transparent. $100 for every 15 minutes, and you just book the amount of time you want with a like-minded Freedom Doctor who's unbiased. Another thing we do is we put together naturopathic doctors and allopathic doctors. We've got it all.
Oh, no, and you know you're not supposed to do that, right?
Yeah, so nobody told me. I don't listen very well to direction.
But that's amazing that you're
It's
actually,
amazing.
because it's been two competing
That's right.
tracks.
And by the way, that's mostly in America. That's not true in other nations. There were
true.
lawsuits that started they divided the naturopath doctors from prescription writing doctors. That division needs to stop. Sometimes you need a prescription, a lot less often than you think you need a prescription, and you need access to all the information to decide.
Yeah.
And then if you want to, we also want people to be prepared. We don't want you to have a pharmacist that tells you can't get this medicine. Absolutely not. Goldcare.com, we have preparedness prescription packs that you can buy, and we mail them to you. I want you to have in your medicine cabinet hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, Zithromax, prednisone. I want you to have those medicines at home, so when you need it, nobody else can block you from it.
Oh, that's awesome. Goldcare.com. You don't have an excuse anymore.
Right,
I think thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Because we meet people so many times that are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what, they can't
This is the solution. And by the way, it is honestly your civic obligation. Anybody who's hearing my voice who knows your show, this is your civic obligation. The reason I'm doing this is twofold. One is you need a good doctor. You need to trust. But the other reason is the macro reason. I learned in 2021 that the people behind the vaccine mandates, the constricting, were the insurance companies. We're not talking Pfizer, Moderna. I'm saying that it was Kaiser, it was United Health Group, it was Blue Cross. It benefited them financially to force the mandates. It's a complicated reason, but we found that out in discovery. You as a freedom-fighting person, a person who's putting your voice out there, should not be carrying an insurance policy. Now, Medicare age is different, but average working class age people who believe as we believe, should not be carrying and paying for Blue Cross and Kaiser. We will show you a better way, and I'm going to shock you and everybody.
Come on.
I have not had health insurance for more than 10 years. Right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
You think, how could you live in America without health insurance? I will teach you how to do it responsibly. Goldcare.com.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, well, we need to talk more about this. Yeah, that's great. All right, so I got to go there. Let's talk about J6 and what happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you kind of came through that. One of my favorite stories is watching you come out of your prison, with your hair and cornrows. And I'm like, look at that, dropping down, doing push-ups. I'm look at you. Let's talk about that experience and what it did for you.
Yeah, so, I think if the other side throws all this at you and they think they're going to destroy you, I think it's not true. I think you come back twice as strong. I'm really not afraid of anything at this point. I mean, most of us are afraid of jail, losing our freedom, and it's horrible, and it was a terrible experience. But you know what? I did it. So what are you going to threaten me with today? You're not going to scare me. It was terrible. It was selective persecution, selective prosecution by our government. Thank God that Trump is in office. We J6ers, the real J6ers, are going to be bringing lawsuit against the DOJ for having done this. DOJ, the FBI, and the Bureau of Prison for having done this. They violated our constitutional rights. They violated our civil rights. You remember that I'm a lawyer. The illegality, there were so many illegal things. The U.S. prosecutors lied during trials. The district court judges were heinous. They were convicting the defendants in front of them before they were even hearing the stories. And I also wrote a book that's coming out in about 2 months. It's called Selective Persecution, and it uses my J6 story to explain kind of the infrastructure fascism that we have in our nation.
Wow. Let's just, that so many good things, goldcare.com and whatisadoctor.org. How did we get to this place in the medical community where we have such an issue with the doctors?
Yes, there's a few reasons, but a really straightforward one to understand, that my father, who was a doctor, was a small business owner. He was in practice for himself. During the 70s, 80s, certainly in the 70s, 80s, about 85% of doctors were self-employed. It was their own practice. So today it's flipped. Today about 85% of doctors are not self-employed. They are working for somebody else, typically a large hospital corporation, or it ends up down the line, it's really a large insurance company. Essentially, they're serving a corporate master. The problem is when the corporate master comes into conflict with what the patient needs. So the corporate master drives the paycheck.
Right.
So if they had policies, if the corporation set down a policy, no ivermectin, no hydroxychloroquine, then the doctor didn't do it. So we need doctors to be small business owners again. The only way you as a patient will get a straight answer is if you have a doctor who's working for you. I'm a lawyer too. Lawyers work for their clients. You pay them an hourly. Gold Care, you become a member for $10. Then you have access when you need a doctor, and you just pay them hourly. You want 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes, you just pay them for their time. That's it. It's very clean, it's very transparent. You get a doctor's advice in your pocket. We want people with insurance to come to us or without insurance. If you don't have insurance, I will teach you exactly how to do like I do, be done with the insurance model, because it's constricting you. But if you have insurance, I almost want you to come to me more, because you need to get the straight answer. If your doctor tells you you need
right.
XYZ, is that true? Do you need XYZ? So,
well,
goldcare.com.
I mean, you're saying, going back to the COVID question, I know I'm bouncing all over the place. My mind's going, we were bashing Pfizer and all these companies, but you're saying it was really the insurance companies that were driving so much of that.
It was two different things. So Pfizer and Moderna had a financial interest to the shots.
Right.
But what is unknown is that the insurance companies had an interest in the mandates. Okay? I am really...
So they had that all wrapped up, the mandates and then the shots.
Correct. But everyone here who believes as we believe, who is very anti-tyranny and pro-freedom, is paying premiums to companies that are constricting your premiums. The reason I didn't have health insurance for 10 years ago is because I was an insider. I knew the drill. I knew what it was. I wanted maximum freedom, maximum ability to choose my doctor that I wanted, and a financial safety net. That's why you have insurance. Yeah. So I want to teach everybody to get off the fake, the belief that they need medical insurance to have financial safety net. They do not. We will teach you how at goldcare.com. And if you choose to stay with your insurance because you're used to it, it's mother's milk, you sort of understand it.
Sure.
No problem. Twice as important to have a Gold Care doctor who can give you advice when you need, and then you can go back to your insurance doctor as an informed consumer.
That's amazing.
It is.
It's not Simone Gold. What do you think, guys? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much
for coming by.
It's a pleasure.
With me now, Callie Means. Callie, thank you for going by Flashpoint today.
Oh, proud to be here.
You're talking about TrueMed. Explain what your company's all about.
Oh, my company, TrueMed, it's really what Bobby Kennedy, Trump are saying. It's why do we have a sick care system where 95% of all medical spending goes to managing disease after we're sick? You actually have flexibility in the system right now where your doctor could give you a doctor's note for recommending exercise or healthy food, and you can use HSA, FSA dollars for that, so we enable that. But it's just a small example of where I think our country could go, where we just need flexibility for the American patient. Kids are getting sad and they're getting straight to an SSRI. They have high cholesterol, they're going straight to a statin. Just from a medical, clinical, reality, we should be recommending more root cause interventions to the American people.
So how do people that are watching, we're all over the United States here. So let's talk about, what is it that you talk about the sick care system that we're really operating. I think everybody understands exactly what you mean. How do we change that? How do we change this, the whole system needs to be upended and started over in a lot of ways. How do we change that?
Yeah, so the foundational issue in America when it comes to health, I think it's the biggest public policy and I think spiritual issue that we face really, is that our largest industry, the healthcare industry, profits when a child is sick and they're sick for a long period of time. So chronic disease is the greatest profit maximizing invention in the history of American capitalism. But it's not capitalism, there's corporate cronyism. So when you look at the pharmaceutical industry, they make money when someone's sick and they're able to get diabetes, get obesity, get fatty liver disease, get all these depression, all these range of cascading chronic issues, and then you have a pill and you have treatment for life on those things. We manage them. The hospitals, they're fee for service. My friends from Harvard Business School, that work at hospitals, their KPIs are how many beds they're filling, how many sick patients there are. That is how they grow.
The focus is wrong.
Yeah, the focus of every single lever of our healthcare system is how do we get more sick patients? And because that's the invisible hand of our largest industry, healthcare is the largest industry in the country and the fastest growing. Wow. It's the biggest source of American inflation is rising healthcare costs. And what are we getting? We're dying earlier, we're getting fatter, we're getting more depressed, we're becoming more infertile. So as we spend more, we're getting sicker. It doesn't make much sense. We live 10 years less than our friends in Japan or Switzerland. That's a scandal. That's a scandal. We're spending 3 times more per capita on healthcare. So changing that incentive, the American people, everyone here wants to be healthy, but we have trillions of dollars of incentives for us and our children to be sick, and that's what we need to solve. We need to go right at that.
Get specific. What kind of What kind of issues here that could get to get sick? Explain.
Yeah, well, I'll get specific. You know, I've been working with President Trump's team and Bobby Kennedy, and have been with the transition this since the win. We have a golden age of health ahead of us, and getting very specific, the NIH right now spends 90% of their money on pharma R&D. Day one, President Trump has said he's going to direct the NIH to answer one question: why are we getting sick? Why are kids getting sick? That's a transformation. The NIH right now is not reviewing pharmaceutical products. Right now, 50% of pharmaceutical products, you can't replicate the study that led to its approval. So replication of pharmaceutical studies. You know, Bobby Kennedy obviously has talked about vaccines. All they're asking for with that issue is to study, continue doing science, to continue doing trials. I don't think anyone's against that. So the NIH is going to get to the science. What is glyphosate doing, this chemical that they're putting on our foods that's banned in every other country? You have to wear a hazmat suit to spray it. It kills everything in sight. We're told that that's safe, but there hasn't been any analysis of it. Let's just look at the inputs that are impacting our health and get the truth, get the science right. That's going to be a huge win for President Trump. I'll tell you, and the people on the left might not believe this, it's true. President Trump has no ideology when it comes to healthcare. He is instructing to get back to scientific inquiry. So that's number one. Number two, you get to the FDA, drug approvals. It costs $2 billion to get a drug approved. The FDA helps big pharma because they don't want competition. They don't want, you know, these interesting AI apps that can give us better preventative health, interesting diagnostic tools to let us know when we have cancer earlier. Those are all being blocked right now. So deregulation of the FDA, getting conflicts of interest out of the FDA, it's 75% funded by pharma right now. Why is a regulatory agency funded by the industry it's supposed to regulate? That makes no sense. And then lastly, you get to Dr. Oz at the CMS. This is an industry it's kind of a boring, agency. It's the biggest agency in government. The CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, it's bigger than the Defense Department, bigger than the intelligence agency. All the money and the codes. So you won't believe this. Some might know this, but they outsource code creation to the American Medical Association, okay? That's a pharma lobbying group. You can't even make this up, but a pharma lobbying group makes our codes that dictate 20% of the U.S. economy. So if you're at the doctor's office, you're going by what the AMA code says. The AMA, to this day, as we sit here today, says that there's no age limit for gender transition surgeries. They actually put out a press release recently saying it's anti-science to question gender transition surgery for 2-year-olds. I'm not even joking. There's no age limit. That's the judgment of the group that we have outsourced as a government medical decision-making to.
That's bizarre. So how do we get that back?
These are all bold executive actions that can be taken very quickly. You can get corruption out of the FDA very quickly. You can direct where NIH funding could go. You can direct CMS to have more flexibility. The central tenet of what President Trump and Bobby Kennedy have talked about is twofold. Give Americans the truth, okay? Let's have the truth so they can make informed decisions. This is not about banning anything. I think we should have drugs, we should have cigarettes, we should have Coca-Cola, whatever. It's all on the table. Like, let it out there. It's a free country. But there should be informed consent. Yeah. There should be knowledge. So if you have the knowledge from that patients have, then let them make their own decision. Get rid of the mandates. Have the Medicare and Medicaid and all of our insurance allow flexibility. Why does a child who's overweight right now or obese, 12 years old, why is the standard of care, it just changed this year, it's for them to go to Ozempic shots. Those are lifetime drugs.
Oh my goodness.
That's the lifetime.
For 12-year-olds?
For 12-year-olds. That's what the American Academy of Pediatrics says. The American Academy of Pediatrics says, don't wait and see. First line defense. Don't wait until dietary interventions fail. That's a lifetime drug. Patients should have flexibility. Obviously, we should have incentives of our healthcare system. If a child is overweight or obese, we should put them on a path of curiosity about what they're eating. In Europe, in Denmark, where they make Ozempic, they have, government healthcare incentivized food as medicine plans. I mean, we should just have these options. There should be no mandates for what Americans should be putting in their bodies or eating, but we should be incentivizing the right thing. The big question of this MAHA movement is how do we take the $4.5 trillion we're spending on healthcare and incentivize the clinically best interventions to reverse disease and increase American thriving. Right now, the question is how do we profit from Americans being sick?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I saw you on, you and your sister on Tucker, and you were talking about the book Good Energy, which we got. Explain for the people watching what's in there.
Yeah, good energy is that we are being lied to, and it's much more simple than we're told. 90% of medical costs and 90% of deaths in the United States are chronic lifestyle conditions, right? The things that are torturing our country are heart disease, depression, infertility, diabetes, you know, these things that we're all dealing with. 38% of teens have prediabetes right now. What my sister talks about, I wrote the book with her, it's in her voice, is at Stanford Med School, all these are siloed, right? The diabetes doctor doesn't talk to the psychiatrist and doesn't talk to the cardiologist and doesn't talk to the neurologist.
That's right.
You know, if you have all these conditions, which we all have, you're sent to different doctors with different treatment plans, okay?
That's correct.
What the book is saying is that these are all interconnected. They're all interconnected to basic things, and those things are food, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's clearly causing our cells and our metabolic health problems, that we're overloaded with pharmaceuticals. That's a big problem. Sleep, exercise, chronic stress, having a phone. These are basic things, and they're not necessarily bad things. It's not bad that we have some pharmaceuticals. It's not bad that we have cell phones. It's not bad that we have artificial light and that's disrupting our circadian rhythm, but we should know about these things. These things are impacting our metabolic health, and we ignore these things, right? We ignore that kids right now at school receive less time outside than a maximum security prison, okay?
Wow.
They're sitting at a desk under artificial lights, not getting any movement. We're so sedentary right now that 77% of the American young people can't join the military, okay?
Yeah.
But we just drug them. When they get depressed or fidgety or a little bit high cholesterol, we drug them. We don't ask about these root cause factors. We can have a revolution in health if in America we become more curious about the awe of the interconnectivity of our body and get back to incentivizing better root cause outcomes for our American patients and American kids.
All right, good energy. How can the people get the book?
It's available everywhere.
Everywhere, all right.
Thank you.
Callie, thank you so much,
Thank
man.
you. Appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Give him a hand. White House correspondent and reporter for Frontlines here, Monica Page. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gene.
Let me ask you. You're actually there with Corinne Jean-Pierre. I'm going to miss saying that name. Not a lot, not really, but so tell us. People at home want to know what's it like inside the room.
It's really like the Wild West. It's a mix of the Wild West and kind of like high school. I mean, you've got a lot of mainstream media in there that are looking to silence your voice. They're looking to isolate you on purpose. They don't want you to be included in any of their little club and what your little club has to offer. So a lot of the opportunities that I have had so far were kind of made by myself. I mean, I just show up to things, act like I'm part of the crew, and then little by little, I've been asking questions on the South Lawn. I shout at the president to try and get him to answer questions, because Corinne Jean-Pierre doesn't call on the more conservative-leaning outlets. I mean, of course, they'll call on Fox News because Fox News gets the spot in the front. Peter Doocy actually in pretty good with the Biden team, so of course they're going to get a spot. But for our common sense voices like myself, it's been a challenge, but it's been a really good fight. Yes, of course.
Well, and I think the American people have watched and said, wait a minute, where are the conservative voices? We don't see them in the room, and the closest thing you get is a Peter Doocy from time to time. And even then, that's at the end of it, and they've shut the book and gone out. What's the biggest thing that people don't understand about what happens in that press room?
Well, people don't understand that the conservative media is there, but they are sat in the very far back, or it's standing room only. The White House Press Corps and the White House Correspondents Association is like a high school club. They do not want anybody in there who will shake anything up. They want you silenced, and they want you in the back of the room. They are considered bullies to many people. So when you don't see or hear any of those conservative questions, or maybe questions that need to be answered, many of the American people are left wondering, where are they? Where are those voices?
Why are we not hearing the questions?
Exactly. And, it's kind of like an obstruction of the First Amendment, honestly. I mean, we're not giving a voice to the people who maybe have an opposing viewpoint. You're limiting their free speech. And what I'm hoping for this next upcoming administration is that we will hear more from those voices. I mean, President Trump has been the most accessible president to the press over the last 4 years, back in 2016, and now again in 2024. President Trump makes himself available, and everybody's included, not just the mainstream media or those reporters, so-called, but everyone's involved.
Good. All right, so let's talk about, you were mentioning before we started, you've interviewed some folks about Joe Biden's health. Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, now finally the mainstream media is drawing some attention to this, which it's taken them long enough. I mean, this has been a sure sign since the beginning. This isn't back during the first presidential debate. I mean, we saw Joe Biden's cognitive decline on full display back in the 2020 debates with President Trump, before Joe Biden even won the presidency, or allegedly won the presidency, that is. So now that we're seeing him age during the last 4 years, it's been very troubling and very concerning, and really leaves the American people wondering who's really running the country, because Joe Biden is in no mental state to run the country. Nobody knows what's happening. So I took it upon myself to interview some psychiatrists and just some neurologists, perhaps, to see, let's take a look at the signs. The garbled speech, the stiffened gait when he walks,
right.
The masked face showing little to no emotion, just the delay and the lack of blinking, the lack of reaction that we get, any sort of emotional, we don't get any of that. And those are all signs of Parkinson's and early onset, maybe dementia. And, you know, finally the media is catching on to this, but it's been hidden for us. I mean, the Democrats have been covering up. Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, oh, he's sharp, he's with it. But when you tell the American people time and time again, don't believe your lying eyes or ears, you know, you are creating just an environment where people are going to revolt and really push back. And that's exactly what we're seeing, and that's what we just saw in this past election with President Trump winning. So this is concerning, and I'm shocked that this has not made more attention and more news.
Well, there's a report even this week about they've been covering for this from the very beginning. That's what you're saying, you're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, this has been, the signs have all been there, not just the first presidential debate. This has been there since back in 2020.
In fact, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because to me, I thought that was just Joe Biden on a Tuesday during that debate. So I was surprised to see how that was really the response. Don't buy it. I think they was already decided at that time he was out.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm sure everybody can relate to have had at least one parent or maybe grandparent who went through similar stages.
Sure.
Unfortunately, it's not a pretty thing. It's not a, you know, it's not a very positive thing to go through, especially as a family member or a friend. But, you know, anybody who's experienced that knows what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you know Caroline Leavitt, we do too.
Yes.
Coming in, what are you expecting to see from her as press secretary coming forward?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of hers, and I think she puts up a great fight against the mainstream media. She goes on those opposing mainstream media outlets that perhaps don't like her, like CNN, MSNBC, and she fights. And we don't see that from the Democrats. The Democrats refuse to do any sort of media. So to see Caroline really fight for the truth and fight for President Trump is something that's inspiring to everybody, and we are very much looking forward to having her in the press briefing room, where I hope that she really creates some groundbreaking waves in there, maybe moving some of the mainstream media to the back, or a couple rows, maybe moving, giving our organization, Turning Point, a seat. I am very proud to announce that Turning Point is part of the White House Correspondents Association. We do now have a membership, so I'm hoping that little by little we'll get a little bit closer to getting a seat in that press briefing room. But I know that because it's Caroline Leavitt and because it's President Trump and because we are part of Charlie Kirk's amazing organization, that we will get a question. And I'll be very excited to be serving the American people and being that voice for them in that press briefing room for President Trump.
Monica Page, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you from the press room.
Yep, I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Gene.
I don't really care what you call me, Turning Point. I'm just happy that we won and we beat the Democrats.
If a single good man and a single good woman could stand up and be found, he'll save the entire nation. And he did that for our country this year. God's not done with America yet. This year proved it.
Faith and hard work goes together. Having discipline and faith preeminates success. You know, you got to have an author and perfecter God who's give us the opportunity to be in this place, who provide our help. We wouldn't be in this position without him or be able to be in the field. So, God first.
I just really believe that Jesus is the way. He's the only way, he's the truth, and he's the life. And if I believe that he's the antidote to the sickness of the world, then I want to see everyone set free with hope.
We understand that the church is the bride of Christ and that the church needs to be the counselor to the king, that if the church remains silent and complicit and scared and cowardly, we will not have a nation.
Flashpoint, the point at which something or someone bursts suddenly into action. Some things happen by chance, and some things happen because we make them happen. Are you ready to make a wave across this nation? Will you step up to ignite the change America needs? Will you become a combustion agent in the Flashpoint Army? Together, we can cause a combustive reaction across America, igniting the hearts and minds of patriots who've had enough. The line has been drawn. It's time to pick sides. Victory is at hand. Don't miss an event. Don't miss a single program. We're taking back America. Stay informed, stay in faith, and stay ready, because it's time for the next level of Flashpoint. Welcome back to the second half of Flashpoint. Look, we've got so much more to go. I know you enjoyed Dr. Gold and Callie Means. Listen, but I want to get you right into my interview with Michael Knowles. They say, well, I don't really know that name. If you've been following the Daily Wire and all these other outlets that bring new news to you that we probably never heard of 4 years ago, you will know that Michael Knowles is one of the voices in America speaking the truth. So let's go my interview with Michael Knowles and watch this. With me now, Michael Knowles, Daily Wire. Thank you, sir, for being here on Flashpoint.
Thank you for having me. You know, in the past several weeks, more than that, people in my chat keep saying, Michael, I want you to go on Flashpoint. That's no hyperbole, has been consistent. I said, well, I don't know. You make it. Are you guys producers at Flashpoint? You're doing it. So I'm glad that we could connect here.
I'm glad we were able to check that box. Yeah, finally. All right, so let's talk about, Daily Wire. What's the biggest challenge you think we're facing in the next 4 years?
At the Daily Wire, that I have to work with Shapiro, of course.
Well, of course. Other than that, that's the obvious one. But you guys are on the edge just like we are. So what do you see in the next 4 years?
The biggest challenge, really, in the next 4 months, I don't know, is going to be that Trump is going to have to do the deportations. I don't see any way he gets out of it. It is now a mainstream majority political issue. And the establishment media are going to use whatever last little juice they have to portray this man as Hitler 2.0. And it's going to be extremely difficult in the best of circumstances, but it has to happen. Following that, President Trump's next big effort is going to be to deport bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. That's another massive undertaking. And he's got unified government, but herding House Republicans, it's like herding cats. So, he's got his work cut out for him, but I think that's what's immediately on the horizon.
Yeah, and what we're seeing already, of course, have you ever seen a president-elect have so much power before he ever takes office?
He just effectively is the president right now. I mean, the foreign leaders are really only talking to him.
They're lining up, talking to him, yeah.
Right.
All right, so when we look at media coverage, now, the world was very different 4 years ago, coming into COVID. We were, sliding into all of that stuff. Suddenly, America realized they don't have truth in media, truth in the news. Our eyes were open to the bias in the media, and henceforth things like Daily Wire, Flashpoint, we got pushed to the top because of what we're being able to produce the truth. How has that changed the Daily Wire the last several years?
Well, it feels nice to be trouncing MSNBC and other networks that used to be really prominent. I agree that people came to an awareness of what the establishment media are like, but a lot of people had already come to that awareness in years past. I think what we saw here was a technological change. The streaming just became so good and accessible, and cable news, people just cut the cords. So that was a technological help. And then there was a political help, which is that Elon Musk put his money where our mouths are. Yeah. So Elon, paid $44 billion for our opinions. And that really allowed a lot of the new media to flourish. And the new media are always right-wing because the left has the old media. So there was a journalist from a liberal but extremely prominent establishment outlet. I won't say which network. And he said, Michael, do you think that the left will ever be able to do well in alternative media like the right has? And I said, you tell me, man. You don't need the alternative. You have the main one. People just are tuning you out because you lied to them, and they don't need you anymore.
Yeah, well, let's talk about mainstream, because now that will not be able to remain to be the excuse anymore. But with the, think about Tucker leaves, Fox, average of 3 million viewers a night, goes over to X and blows out the, every time he puts out there. You guys, what you're doing, what we're doing, it's going at a different level. Is there really a need for the mainstream media or conventional broadcast media?
Well, it's helpful in that it reaches certain people, median age about 157, but it does reach certain groups that are not totally tuned in. But I was speaking to a family member the other day, and I was contemplating, a suggestion that I go do something else in my career. And I said, I don't know, I really like my job. It's kind of fun. And he said, well, yes, of course. I mean, you're on YouTube. And I thought he was kind of joking. I said, well, anybody can be on YouTube. He said, no, like, that's all I watch now. I don't watch cable. He said, it's much better to be on YouTube or now on X than to be on, I don't know, CNBC or something. That is such a shift in prestige and influence. I don't think that I've even caught up with it yet.
No, I don't. And you mentioned it's nice to be trouncing MSNBC's numbers, but when their numbers are so low, it's kind of like wasn't a challenge. Like
dancing with faint praise.
Yeah. So we'll take it though. We'll take it. All right. So looking forward, where do you see the challenges on the conservative lines? We've been watching what's happened for the last 4 years with the conservatives. You're talking to people every day. You're out there all the time. Where do you think the challenge is for the Conservative Party going forward?
Well, the biggest challenge we're going to have is that we won so much.
Yeah.
So we brought in so many people who had been Democrats for decades. We brought in, by my count, at least 17% of Democrat presidential primary candidates from the last 2 cycles. They voted for Trump this time. That's pretty insane. So that's all right. I welcome them and their support and especially their votes. But there is a risk to a big tent, which is that you lose your objectives, you lose your sense of identity. So I think we need to accompany people, be gracious, hold them by the hand, but point out some non-negotiables. For instance, God exists. We can know that with certainty just from human reason, from the natural world. We can also know it from revelation and religious experience, but we can actually just know that. Our founding fathers just knew God existed. That's like the premise of the country, in the Declaration and the Constitution. So you have to know that. You have to know that in large part because we're made in the image of God. So if you don't know who God is, you don't know who you are. And now we don't know what a woman is. So that's part of why. You have to know what a man is. That way you can know what government is, because we have reason and we have will. So that means that we can make laws. It means that we can have a self-government. If we were chimpanzees, we couldn't do that. No. So that tells us something about government. And if you know something about government, that can tell you something about politics broadly, the fundamental unit of which is the family. It's not the individual, it's not a chimpanzee, it's the human family, which is the basic social unit and cannot be redefined, despite what the libs and the squishes say. Those things, as far as I can tell, are kind of non-negotiable. That's where you start. None of that is really policy. That's just the way to start thinking about policy. I think we need to ground our new fellow travelers in those realities.
That's true. Let's talk about the age groups. We're here at America Fest. I think this is the largest one yet. Today it's grown by leaps and bounds since we started coming here, like you guys. What do you attribute such growth across all generations?
Charlie Kirk was one of the most important guys to winning this election. It's kind of he was. It was amazing. I was joking with the producer of his show, Andrew, when we were figuring out when I'd go on his show today. And he offered a time. I said, okay, I'll check the schedule. He said, Michael, I just want you to know it's a great honor to be invited on the show. And he was joking. But I said, man, you're joking. It is. You're like a grand poobah of the GOP right now. It really worked. The TPUSA mission worked. It actually paid off. And on the right, there are so many nonprofits that promise the sun, the moon, the sky, and they raise zillions of dollars, and they do nothing. And it's just a way to buy a nice apartment or something. And that's not what TPUSA did. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. So why are people jazzed to be here? Because TPUSA matters.
It does. What about, let's talk about faith, because faith in America has grown by leaps and bounds, and we're seeing a resurgence of faith in younger generations, in the, actually more than than maybe their parents' generation.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
Like on a clock, the pendula sometimes swing back, and young people today have been raised largely without religion.
Right.
Even I was raised a cradle Catholic. I had some good catechists as a child, but catechesis was just weak generally in that era. Lots of electric guitars and smiley, happy clappy stuff, and that doesn't give you the richness, the profundity of the faith, and people fall away, as I did for 10 years. So people now are raised basically without religion. Their religion is liberalism, indifferentism, you do you, skepticism, we can't know anything about God or whatever. And people are finding that is unsatisfying, it is making them miserable, and it's preventing them from living their lives. It's preventing us from drawing conclusions about anything, including what a woman is. So I think the recent return to reverence, orthodoxy, serious religion, I think that's just the natural consequence, because reality is going to reassert itself in the end. It might take a while, but it'll happen.
It will happen. All right, let's fast forward 4 years. We're about out of time, but I want to fast forward 4 years. Trump's leaving a wonderful economy, a wonderful America, strong again. The obvious choice is to see J.D. Vance step in and take that. Where do you think America will be in 4 years?
Well, it's unclear. I mean, I love J.D. Vance. I was absolutely elated when he was picked as the VP candidate. He was top of the list. However, if I were J.D. Vance, I would hope that some of the other nominees for the cabinet positions were just total nobodies. And one of the problems right now is Trump is picking too many solid people, like really good people. So I think there will be a real primary in 2028. I mean, the fact that Rubio, for instance, is Secretary of State, he's already run for president. You know he wants to run for it again. But even the rest, Kristi Noem at DHS, I don't know, the list goes on and on and on. So it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have too many people who are vying for the future of the party. But to give JD a little bit of his due, and to give the movement that he's tapped into a little bit of its due, I think the future of the party is going to be less throw your hands in the air, libertarianism, we can't legislate morality, and it's going to be more focused on things like virtue and on the common good. I think we've focused on procedural norms for the past 10, 20 years, to the almost exclusion of substantive goods. And I think people want to talk about substantive goods again. The first precept of the law is do good and avoid evil. And the skeptics and the squishes, they say, well, everyone has their own good, who's to decide? And you think I don't know, guys. To me, it's not the same to do good and avoid evil as it is to do evil and avoid good, which is what the left wants. We actually can figure out the difference between those things, and we got to act on it.
Yeah, we do got to act on it. All right, Michael Knowles, Daily Wire, thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you to all of you.
Yeah. Welcome back to Flashpoint. Officer Tatum, great to see you, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so last time we talked, we were in the middle of everything from people getting canceled, people getting not being able to speak freely, freedom of speech being attacked. Now we've got a new president-elect coming in.
Thank God.
Have things changed with what you're seeing in America yet?
Well, I think to a certain degree, right? I think that things had already changed, and I just caught up with it looking at the election. Because I didn't really think the election was going to go the way it went. I knew that Trump was going to win, but I didn't think he was going to whoop him the way he did, which tells me that the people have woken up, and when they're given an opportunity to have a voice, they spoke. And they gave Donald Trump the victory. So I feel like a part of me felt that people were changing. People in my family, other people that I've talked to, see comments on social media. My social media have grown a lot. So with that in mind, I felt like people possibly were changing. But the propaganda is so crazy that I figured that maybe people would be consumed by that when it comes election time.
Well, and I agree with you. We were believing it. Well, it looks good, but we're nobody wanted to say, I think we got it. So, which is probably a good thing that we kept pushing all the way to the end. But let's talk about when do you think was the transitional moment or the flashpoint when things changed and that you think Trump got pushed over the edge?
That's a good question. I think there's a few historically. One of the major ones was when Joe Biden dropped out, because they had gone on for I don't know how long, saying that Joe Biden was competent, he was okay, that we're all crazy by thinking that he's on his last leg. And then you see him drop out after getting COVID or whatever the case may be, and then they just install Kamala Harris. And then therefore people are saying, that's not democracy. Nobody voted for her. They installed this woman. And people begin to wake up. The biggest one of all, I think, was during COVID, when people were getting locked down, the misinformation that was happening, and they had an opportunity to stay home, not being at work, looking at social media, not the mainstream media, and they've been able to get information that they wouldn't have normally gotten, especially when it came to Joe Rogan with ivermectin and things like that. People began to just see it as it unfolded in real time.
I hadn't really thought about going back to the COVID, but yeah, that was a real eye-opener for a lot of people, finally to see what's really going on. What about another fence signpost along the way was July 13th with the assassination attempt.
Oh, yeah.
Up there in Pennsylvania.
I don't know how I forgot to mention that one. That was a huge one as well. It inspired me to see Donald Trump put his fist in the air, stand up strong for the American people after these lunatics tried to take his life. And I had already been a Trump supporter. I already was going to vote for him. There was nothing going to stop me from doing that. But that just made me feel like it's really us against them. Because them trying to kill him is not just him. They're trying to kill the future of America and trying to kill our vote. And for Donald Trump to stand strong and make it through that after all he's been through, I said, we got to go even harder for him.
Yeah, and then right after that was the Republican National Convention. We were there, but it totally overtook the whole convention because he shows up with the bandage on his ear, and I'm like, man, if this guy, if he can't win this time, this seems like a push for sure. But so obviously we're glad to see that. But you mentioned something about when you talk about culture, you're referring to about things changing. We still have an issue, most recently with a shooting right there in that Christian school.
The one thing that bothers me about that shooting is that I don't think that Christian hatred get enough attention. If you don't like people in Islam, they call you Islamophobic. If you say things negatively about Jewish people, that's anti-Semitism. But what do you call it when you hate Christians? And we have seen two radicalized, either leftist feminists or leftist transgender that went into a Christian school and shot children there and killed them in cold blood. And in this situation, obviously, the teacher had gotten shot. And I wish that it would get more attention, because the radical left and the lunatics in feminism, they hate God and they hate anything that God is associated with. To watch them go out and, watch this person go out and shoot up their school and not get the attention that some of these other shooters have gotten is a tell to me.
And I'm glad you brought up the transgender shooter, because that was brushed under the carpet. I mean, where's this manifesto she wrote? Where is that at? And why haven't we not seen it? Where is, and I think that's what's the most encouraging is people are pushing for they're asking the right questions they weren't asking before. So let's talk about where we go from here. What is it that conservative Christians need to do? What do we need to be concentrating on the next 4 years, especially the next 4?
Yeah, I think the thing that we should be focused on mostly is our relationship with God.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's the priority. Amen. That's the main thing that's going to get you from one year to the next, is getting a real relationship. The reason that we're not just stomping these leftists out every single election is because Christians aren't activated in churches to actually vote for the right things. If you look at statistical data, a lot of Christians don't even vote. They're not even participating in the election. You go to churches, the pastor is, literally trying to evade any chance he can to talk about abortion. What are we doing as Christians? I'm not that concerned by and large about people that don't have faith. I'm mostly concerned about the people that do have faith. Are we activating? So activating your faith, getting closer to God, getting a personal relationship with God, I think is going to be the starting point in us moving in the right direction.
So good, so good. Officer Tatum, thank you, sir. Thanks for coming by. Good to see you.
Well, God bless you. Thank you for having me.
All right, with me now, Mary Margaret Olahan. Mary Margaret, thank you for coming. You're a senior writer for the Daily Wire. All right, so tell me, why are you here in the middle of America Fest?
Well, we are here right before Christmas because this was a really important event for us to be at. You know, so many young conservatives who care passionately about their country, so many important speakers and influencers and even lawmakers who are here to talk about the election and what's next for our country. So we wanted to be here. We want to be part of all this, to interview some of these people. Good. Also to have Michael Knowles and Ben Shapiro speak on stage and get their message out. Just an awesome thing for all of us to be a part of.
All right, I really want to talk about, you're the author of, make sure I get it right, D-Trans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Walk us through that. What is it that you discovered?
Yes, so this was a book that I wrote because as a culture reporter, I was spending a lot of time listening to the stories of people who were being victimized by gender ideology.
Right.
So for example, parents who were struggling with finding that schools were indoctrinating their children, or children who were finding this gender content online and being lied to or duped. And so I started hearing more and more stories of young people who had been pushed down the path to transition, and they were lied to and told that it would make them happy. And as I started finding more and more of these stories, I thought, why is the media not reporting them? Why are we not hearing these stories from the New York Times or the Washington Post? And so I took a step back and said, maybe we should be telling them. So Chloe Coles, one of the girls that's in my book, she's here. She's an amazing fighter against gender ideology. I spoke with her, I spoke with Prisha Mosley and a number of other young people. And the book is just their stories. It's the reported stories of young people who tried to do the unthinkable to change their gender and then realized that's impossible and went back to living as their biological sex. And of course, there's a lot of side effects from this type of thing. There's a lot of negative repercussions from trying to do this. But they're here, they're telling their stories. They want people to know there's life after detransition. And they also want to warn people against this type of thing, right? If they could do it again, they have examples of how to avoid it, and people should listen to their stories.
So what's the common thread that you found in all of these stories?
There's a bunch. I would say that for young people, social media is the biggest factor in what pushed them down this path. Of course, you know, there might be a teacher or a therapist or a counselor, someone that really got them started, but social media across the board, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, all these different platforms are places where young people are finding this content. And you know, a lot of young people nowadays really struggle with identity. We don't know who we are, we don't know why we're made, why we're on this earth, and of course faith answers a lot of those questions, but a lot of kids nowadays don't have faith and parents aren't teaching it to them. And so when you have a whole generation that's seeking identity, there's going to be people who are supplying an identity that's going to hurt them. And that's what's going on with gender ideology. These activists will say, oh, you don't feel comfortable in your body as a woman, or oh, you wish that you weren't sexually assaulted. Maybe it's because you're in the wrong body. Maybe it's because you're actually a different sex. And so they're successful in these ways, and a lot of the detransitioners have mental health issues, and so those issues don't go away once they try and transition. But they're lied to, and they're basically told this is the magic cure-all pill that will solve all your problems. And so once they cross the line and they try and transition, and they get to a point where maybe they've had a double mastectomy and they've gone on testosterone, and they realize, wait, I don't feel better. And that's the point where a lot of them realize, wait, all of this was a lie, and they need to, throw off the shackles of this lie and go back to living as their biological sex.
So are you seeing, it seems to me that, and you can either confirm or deny this, that there's a escalating number of those detransitioning. Do you think we're getting to kind of like that point in the bell curve where wait a minute, this isn't working out the way we thought?
Well,
or are we just now hearing about it?
It's hard to say because we have such bad numbers on detransitioners for a couple reasons. One of them is that most doctors, these gender doctors, they don't want to actually admit that detransitioners exist. So when it comes to reporting rates of detransitioners, a lot of doctors won't report them accurately, and the detransitioners are unlikely to go back to their doctor and report rates of detransition Because in effect, like going back to an abuser and saying, hey, I wish you didn't abuse me, when you go back to your doctor and say, hey, I'm regretting this, I'm going to start over. Because that's the person that told you, if you do this, you'll be happy and you'll be okay. So it doesn't really make sense for them to go back.
Right.
But that being said, there are so many brave young people speaking out about their detransition experience, and that has been so monumental in helping people understand what's going on. You know, people like Chloe and Luca and Prisha, they've been speaking up about their stories, and it's helped the whole world to understand the gravity of this. And then also, I think if you look at the last election and how that went, so many Americans went to the polls specifically on the transgender issue, whether it was ideology in schools or gender ideology being pushed on kids being taken away from parents.
I think the parent thing is really what motivated a lot of people to get out. They were just like, I don't want somebody else telling me what I can do with my child.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, obviously there are cases where parents are pushing this on their children for evil or narcissistic reasons. That absolutely happens. But most of the cases that I hear about are parents who are manipulated by these doctors and therapists. So for example, a parent who loves their child, wants their child to thrive, their daughter comes to them and says, I think I'm a boy, and the parents think, I know she's not a boy, but I don't know how to handle this, so they take her to the doctor, and the doctor says, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? And that's not like a dramatic phrase that I'm making up. That's what they're told.
Yeah, we've heard that.
It's really so evil and so cruel a thing to say to a parent. And a lot of these parents aren't equipped religiously, morally, politically to handle this type of rhetoric. And so they think, I don't want my child to kill themselves. But it's based on a lie. It is not true that your child will kill themselves if they can't undergo invasive surgeries and hormonal interventions. That's a lie. And it's kind of an obvious lie, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, this is what's being pushed on our parents. So I think we need to equip parents to understand what they're up against, because it's not something any parent should have to deal with, those lies and manipulation and the sorrow that comes with believing those things.
Yeah, all right. So, Mary Margaret, how can people track with what you're writing in the book? How can they find you?
Well, you can always find my work at dailywire.com. I write a lot of different stories for them. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Mary Marg Olahan.
All right, Mary Margaret, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Flashpoint today. I want a special thanks to Dr. Simone Gold, Callie Means, Monica Page, Michael Knowles, Brandon Tatum, and of course, Mary Margaret Olahan. I know you enjoyed the program today. This wraps up a lot of our special interviews we did at AmFest back in December, and I just believe you enjoy that. Make sure, if you've missed any of our programs, you go back to the Rumble channel, the Flashpoint Rumble channel, and catch up on everything. Don't forget, we will be in Omaha, Nebraska at Lord of Hosts Church, January 30th and 31st. 2 evening service, special services, fpnextlevel.com, fpnextlevel.com. Register. It's a free event. Let us know you're coming. Bring a friend. Don't worry about the snow. They have snow trucks, snow plows. It's going to be a great event. I want to see you there. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week right here on Flashpoint.